Jai Ma Kamakhya, Jai Matara, Jai Bhairava Baba. So today on a Thursday, after the Amavasya, monthly Amavasya Upasanas, then I do a lot of sadhanas, specific sadhanas of different forms of Mahavidyas on Amavasya Tithi. It's been going on for many years. So I thought of making this video more like an update on a news that I would like to share with my viewers or the people who have been following me. So there is a book that I've written and it is going to come out in about a month's time. It's a book on Tantra Sadhana. The name of the book is The Truth About Tantra. So this book is more like an attempt to navigate the path of Tantra Sadhana for somebody who is starting off on the process but does not have much idea. So it is not a book meant for the scholar. It is not a book meant for somebody who is already well established in a tantric path and has a lot of experience. Neither is this book meant for those who have no idea about this and have a very strong mental block against Tantra Sadhana. And by Tantra, I don't only mean Dakshinachara. It is very much Vamachara and Kolachara and the whole system of Tantra that is existent there for centuries. So anybody who has a mental block towards these things should not read the book. Anybody who thinks that he already knows a lot about Tantra should also avoid the book. But it is for the people in the middle zone who have been exposed to a lot of information regarding Tantra from the internet, because these days things are quite wide open. In fact, things were wide open for at least 50, 60 years, but in terms of books, at that time we did not have the internet. If we had, then all this information in the books would have already been to the internet by now. So books were being published for at least 50 years, 100 years by now. People have been doing researches on Tantra in foreign universities and exoticizing Tantra in its own peculiar way. Then others have been writing, books of miraculous remedies based on Tantra. Everything is there in the open. It was there in the open for a long time. But where it misses out, I feel, is that we need to have more books that specify the structure and the process of the system. So Tantra is not entirely a kind of, on the one extreme we have a sense of miracle mongering, that something is going to happen, some magic and this and that, etc. On the other hand, on the other extreme is the very super orthodox textbookish kind of knowledge that is passed on, which is like, you have to sit on the left and you cannot look at this side, and this your arghapatra has to be on this side and you cannot change it to that side. So very technical ritual manual and following it to the T, and any violation of that is considered as a deviation from Tantra. So both of these, in my opinion, and I base my opinion on having done my Bhairava Upasana for more than 20 years. Along with it, there are various processes related to Matara and Kamakhya and others that I've done over years, many experiences, interacting with people, learning from who are more capable, observing them, etc. So all this taken together, the basic idea that I have understood is that the truth is neither fully this. So it is not a complete miracle mongering exercise. Those siddhis are crucial to Tantra Sadhana. In fact, they are a parameter of success in the sadhana. That is why there is not a single text of Tantra that does not speak of prayogas, that does not speak of certain, miraculous abilities. In fact, even the Hanuman Chalisa mentions miraculous abilities. So anybody who says that he denies siddhi is actually denying text, is, I'm afraid, blind and perhaps spiritually retarded, to put it that way. So some of my team had once shown some videos where it was claimed that there is nothing called siddhis. That's the most ridiculous thing that I've heard ever. But the world is filled with ridiculous people and ridiculous ideas, so not everything needs to be taken seriously. On the other hand, there are certain ideas that have been propagated also, which consider Tantra to be very strictly textbookish kind of ritual manual of Paddhati of sadhana. There also, I feel it is not exactly that, because once you enter into the field, there are various degrees of leeway that is given to the Upasaka based on the sampradaya, based on the methodology of sadhana, and finally based on his or her anubhuti. In fact, actual Tantra Sadhana, not just being a priest doing pujas, but actual process of Tantra Sadhana, there is always some of the other changes that happens in very good Upasakas, high caliber sadhaks. It is always there. So some very personalization of the process will always happen. It is like Indian classical music where the notes are fixed, but the actual rendition of the song and the rendition of that specific raga will vary from individual to individual, and that makes all the difference between who is a great singer and who is an average singer. Same way, who is a great upasaka and who is an average upasaka, the difference comes in that certain X factor comes in from within, and that is under the purview of broad structure of Tantra Sadhana. This broad structure of Tantra Sadhana is very important to understand. In the last 3 years at least, since the time I first came on a podcast uh, in the Beer Biceps channel, since then I've seen innumerable people coming online, and there is like a flood of information on Tantra, on various types of beings, Siddhis, this, that, everything is there, and with millions and millions of views. Personally, I don't agree with a lot of that content. I But then I don't care. The world is free. The world has to choose what it decides. Everybody has their own discrimination power. They can choose what is right, what is wrong, what gels with them, what does not gel with them. So that type of the information, there's like a flood of information. In that kind of a context, what is most important to have a text that gives you a broad structure of what is Tantra Sadhana. That is, this broad structure gives you is like a pathway which tells you that there are how many how Tantra looks at the world, what is the philosophy of Tantra, how did it originate, why is it considered to be a method that is applicable for Kali Yuga, what is the truth, what is the the power that runs Tantra Sadhana. That's very important to understand. Why should you follow Tantra Sadhana? Why can't you follow the Vedic path only? I mean, the Vedic path is of course there, the Tantric path is also there, but where does it take its authority? What are the different classifications of people that Tantra follows? For example, there are three, unlike in the other systems, Tantra broadly classifies all human beings under three broad primary categories based on the gunas, based on their competency in this path, and based on the kind of afflictions or the pashas or chains that ties an individual. Same way, there are stages or acharas of Tantra Sadhana. There are various methodologies or attitudes that the Upasaka adopts when he or she approaches the Tantra Sadhana. Importance of Guru, importance of Diksha, importance of the lineage of the Guru. Many things are there, prayogas, etc. So, this book is basically aimed to give you an overview of these processes and structures, especially for somebody who is confused with overload of information from the internet and all around, not sure where to start, but at the same time is not atheistically disposed or antagonistic towards Tantra, neither the extreme textbook Puritan who understands exactly what is written in the text and not beyond that. The reason I say textbook Puritan is because many of the sadhana processes that we follow, even from the most orthodox systems, were designed and came into existence about 300 to 400 years, in the last 300 to 400 years, not more than that. Most of it in the Tantra Sadhana. Before that, there was other paddhatis that used to be followed. So this is a very regular thing. This is a very standard process when deity upasana happens, that over time there are updates done, there are revisions done, there are changes that are introduced into the process based on the capacity and competency of great masters and upasakas who come. And it also reflects the changed circumstances of the Desh Kal Patra of the times than when these texts are composed. So on the one hand, all shastras have to be looked at as divine outpourings. For example, tantras are dialogue between Shiva and Parvati, or Bhairava and Bhairavi. But at the same time, there are also historical time frames when each or the other tantra sadhana the text actually came into existence in popular consciousness. A text like, for example, the Kularnava Tantra is very ancient, whereas a text like the Mahanirvan Tantra is hardly about 150 to 200 years old. So these, it doesn't make it less important. In fact, Mahanirvan Tantra is a very guiding and powerful tantra in a lot of practices that are done in Eastern India. But my point being that when you have an extreme view that only what is written in the text is the final authority, especially with respect to technicalities like how you are sitting, what type of mandala you are drawing, what type of mudras you are doing, etc., you tend to miss the broader context that many of these processes only came into existence in the last 1 to 100 years. So before that, also people were doing Tantra Sadhana. The Paddhatis were a little different. And again, it's possible that 500 years from now, the same deities will be worshipped. There may be a broad similarity in the structure. The mantras will remain the same. But the way in which puja of the deities are done will undergo changes based on Deshkal Patra and the advent of great masters and souls who incarnate, who are connected to the deity, and who can show a new path which brings results. Because Tantra Sadhana, among all the Paddhatis within Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, is the one particular branch of Upasana where the result is extremely important. If you are not getting the result, then you need to review. Of course, it doesn't mean that you will get the result in in a few months of practice or a year or 2 years of practice. If you're that impatient, then perhaps the spiritual path is not fit for you in the first place. People and even our rishis, the great rishis, by the way, the rishis also appear in the tantric texts. It's believed that almost every Mahavidya, every sadhana that we do in the tantras have already been perfected by the rishis and given to us from there. So it is not something done by outsiders. The rishis are the source of our dharma, even the tantric dharma in a way. So these fantastic godlike rishis used to spend innumerable time doing very hard penances. Why do you think they were doing that? If you can get a result in only a few months time and few weeks time, it's just basic common sense. If you ask these questions of yourself, you will understand that where exactly you stand in the path, how much effort is needed. So all good things will require time, will require effort, and will require sacrifice from within oneself. Without sacrifice, there is no growth that can happen. This is the first cardinal rule of nature. And that is why, though there are hundreds of people, thousands of people interested in various upasana paddhatis today, connecting to deities, etc., yet the amount of people who reach the highest stages of Devata Upasana, come into contact with deities, is actually very small. And it is not based on whether they come from a great sampradaya, whether they come from an unknown sampradaya, whether they are connected to some XYZ Rishi, XYZ Swami, or XYZ, Acharya, this or that. It's not based on that. There are many factors that go in, and only the Devata has the capacity. In a previous era, 500-600 years ago, there were gurus of that caliber in Tantra, in the Tantric field, who had themselves attained terrific Siddhis and could pass it down to Shishyas. Today, that thing is almost very rare, if not completely non existent. So, therefore, it is the individual's effort, the individual's karmas, and not just efforts from one lifetime, but efforts from multiple lifetimes that accumulate and decide that who is it that is going to reach the highest stages of sadhana and who will not. These things are not um, based on thumb rules. One cannot just say that, okay, you go to this sampradaya which is very famous and you take a diksha from there and immediately you will reach. It doesn't matter like that. It doesn't work like that. Reality is very different from that. So even after observing uh, many people, many upasakas, what the one thing that I have understood is that once you figure out the broad understanding of Tantra Sadhana, eventually it comes to a lot of hard work and discipline. There is no magic, there is a process. Hard work, discipline, commitment, and patience, time. A good upasaka requires at least minimum of 3 years of sadhana of the deity. I mean, you can get a lot of experiences before that also, but it doesn't mean that it is going to stick with you. 3 years, 1000 days is the first, cutoff. Then you go to 12 years. Only when 12 years of sadhana is done, unbroken of a deity, that is when you can say that you have actually established roots in the upasana of the devata, and that deity is going to, at least deity and the parivara devatas, etc., the deity and the Parivar Devatas are going to take notice of the Upasaka. So these ideas broadly are what you will find in this book. Once again, it is not a book for scholars. It is not a book for people who think that they already are perfect masters of Tantra. They can all skip the book. It is not for those who have a very negative bias towards Tantra. And by Tantra, I don't mean only Dakshinachara, Sattvic Tantra, but the actual Tantra which texts mention, which is Vamachara and Kaulachara. All that is very much a part of Tantra. And in fact, there are more texts that speak of these two paddhatis, of two paths, than there are texts that speak of Dakshinachara, to be honest. So it is not for those who have a bias. It is only for those who are really curious, who have entered the path, who have been doing some upasana, some mantra, be it Bhairava sadhana, be it Tara sadhana, be it anything, and also needs to understand a broad philosophical view of how Tantra looks and shapes the world, and also what is the the parameters, the pathways in which you have to go in order that you can reach the higher stages. So it gives you like a a guideline sort of about the whole process and the structure. It is not a book that will tell you that you have to do this sadhana and that sadhana. No, it tells you that the things that come into play when you enter into the field of Tantra, and a broad structure that is followed by all sampradayas, whether it is the traditional, the Dakshinachara, Vamachara, or the Nath Sampradaya Tantra, whatever. There is a certain path and there is a certain paddhati, broad outline of that paddhati. This book is about that. I hope you enjoy the book once it comes out, which is likely to be towards the end of December. I will keep you updated on this. Jai Matara, Jai Bhairava, Jai Kamakhya.